The child stopped breathing evenly somewhere between the third and fourth red light on Spintex Road at 11:22 p.m. Kolade Nwosu noticed it in the rearview mirror. He had been watching the girl the way drivers watch things they are not supposed to worry about, peripherally, carefully, without turning around. She was 7, maybe 8. She was pressed against the window on the left side of the back seat, with her cheek flat against the glass and her mouth slightly open, and the glass had fogged in a small half-circle where her breath hit it. But the half-circle was smaller than it had been 10 minutes earlier. The woman beside her, who had flagged Kolade down outside the locked gates of Korle Bu Teaching Hospital at 11:04 p.m., had not spoken since she gave him the name of the pharmacy on Liberation Road. She had one arm around the girl, and she was staring at the seat in front of her. Kolade did not ask questions. He drove. He had been driving for 23 years, and he knew what certain silences in the back seat meant. What he did not know, what he would not know until 11 minutes and 40 seconds after this night was over, was that his name was already being spoken in a house on Cantonments Road in Accra. And the man speaking it had the power to reshape the entire structure of what his life looked like from that moment forward. Kolade Nwosu was 54 years old and 68 kilograms, which was 6 kilograms less than he had weighed 3 years ago when his wife Efua died of a stroke on a Thursday afternoon in April while he was driving his second shift on the Tema motorway. He had not recovered the weight. He ate twice a day now instead of 3 times, not because he could not manage it, but because the third meal had always been the one he made for Efua, and he had not been able to stop thinking of it that way. He had not told his daughter this. His daughter Nana, 22 years old, second year of nursing studies at the University of Health and Allied Sciences in Ho, would have told him to eat. She was the kind of person who solved problems by naming them and then addressing them one at a time. He was the kind of person who carried them quietly and kept going. They had found a way to be at peace with their difference. He drove a 2009 Toyota Camry in midnight blue with 319,000 kilometers on the odometer and a crack in the windscreen on the passenger side that he had sealed with clear tape 3 months ago and kept meaning to fix properly. The body of the car was clean. He washed it every morning at 5:45 before the first shift and vacuumed the interior every evening before parking. The floor mats were 15 years old and worn thin, but they had no stains. On the counter of his small apartment in Abasio Kai, 1 room, a bathroom, a gas ring, a window that looked into the wall of the building next door. He kept his personal affairs in the same order: his fuel receipts, his maintenance records, his registration documents, each in a labeled envelope inside a blue plastic folder he had bought at the stationery shop near Makola Market for 8 cedis 50 pesewas. He had replaced the folder twice in 6 years. The contents had never been lost. The car smelled of the cedar air freshener he hung on the rear-view mirror, and underneath that, very faintly, deeply embedded in the fabric of the front seats, of the shea butter Efua had used every morning for 21 years of their marriage. He no longer noticed it. Passengers occasionally commented. He always said it was the air freshener. On the dashboard, clipped between the sun visor and the windscreen frame, was a photograph the size of a passport photo, worn at the corners, slightly overexposed in the way phone-printed photos went after too many months in direct sun. Efua at Labadi Beach on a Sunday, laughing at something Kolade had said that neither of them could remember afterward. He allowed himself to look at it only when stopped at red lights. He had made that rule for himself in the first month after she died, and he had not broken it once. Behind the driver's seat, tucked into the door pocket, was a logbook. He had kept one for every vehicle he had driven since 1999. This one ran 847 pages, each entry made in the same black ballpoint pen. Each line even and precise. Time out, time in, mileage, fuel cost, fare collected, route, notes. His daughter had once taken a photograph of one of its pages and sent it to her friends. He asked her, why? She said because she had never seen anything so organized in her life. He told her that a man who did not know where he had been could not plan where he was going. She photographed him saying it. In the glove compartment, wrapped in a piece of blue cloth cut from the edge of a dress Efua had worn every Sunday for 11 years, was an envelope. It contained 340 cedis. He had been adding to it since February, 50 cedis 1 month, 30 the next. Nothing in the months when nothing could be spared. Something in the months when something could. The 340 cedis was Nana's contribution toward her second-year residential fees. She had told him 100 times that she could manage, that the university had provisions, that she would sort it out herself. He had listened every time and continued adding to the envelope. The envelope was not for emergencies. He turned left onto Liberation Road at 11:17 p.m. and pulled up in front of MedPlus Pharmacy 6 minutes later. The pharmacy was still open. The light inside was the hard flat white of fluorescent tubes, and it fell through the glass front in a rectangle that reached across the pavement and stopped at the curb. There were 2 people behind the counter, a young woman in a pink pharmacist's coat whose name tag read Blessing, and a man at the back who was restocking the shelves and not looking at the door. The air inside the pharmacy was cold, the kind of cold that came from an air conditioning unit set too low for the size of the room, and it smelled of hand sanitizer and the faint synthetic sweetness of packaged medication. Kolade came around and opened the rear passenger door. The woman, who had told him in the first 30 seconds of the ride that her name was Adaize, lifted the girl out carefully. The girl's head fell against Adaize's shoulder and stayed there. Her breathing was audible now, a slight roughness at the back of each exhale, the kind that meant the chest was not clear and had not been clear for more than a few hours. They went inside. Adaize placed the prescription on the counter. It was creased from being folded and refolded inside a pocket for hours, creased the way paper gets when it has been handled by worried hands many times in the same evening. Blessing took it, read it, and went to the shelves. She came back with 2 boxes and a small bottle and typed the total into the register. The screen read 287 cedis 50 pesewas. Adaize opened her bag. She opened her purse inside the bag, and the sound it made, the thin, dry sound of something nearly empty, was its own kind of information. Blessing heard it. She looked at the dress before she looked at the face. She looked at the prescription again without reading it. Adaize put 140 cedis on the counter. She checked the side pockets of the bag and the inner zip. She found 15 more cedis and a handful of coins she counted once, then counted again. The coins came to 7 cedis 30 pesewas. She put everything down. The total was 162 cedis 30 pesewas. She was 125 cedis 20 pesewas short. Blessing did not touch the money. "We cannot split a prescription course," she said. "It has to be completed in full. If it's not completed, it won't work." She said it the way people say things they have repeated so many times the words have lost their texture. She looked at the door when she finished. The man at the back had stopped restocking. He was holding a box in both hands and staring at the wall in front of him. Kolade had been standing near the entrance. He walked to the counter. He took out his wallet and laid down the 43 cedis in it, everything. Then he went back out to the car. He sat in the driver's seat with the blue cloth in his hands. He had been adding to that envelope since February. He knew exactly what was in it and what it was for. He held it for a moment the way a person holds something they know the weight of. Then he opened it and counted out 82 cedis. He brought it inside and placed it on the counter beside everything else. Blessing counted the pile. "That covers it," Colade said. She counted it again. It covered it with 50 pesewas remaining, which she pushed back toward him. He left it on the counter. The man at the back set his box down and went back to the shelves. They brought the girl back to the car. Adese said she needed to reach her cousin's house near Dansoman before midnight. Amma needed a bed, needed water, needed rest. Colade drove. He did not mention the money. He did not mention anything. Adese did not speak for most of the journey, but at the third set of lights on the Oderkor road, she pressed her hand over her eyes and kept it there until he turned onto the final street. He found the address at 12:07 a.m. A 2-story house with a gate and a light on in the upper window. He parked, and Adese carried Amma out. At the gate she turned back. She said she did not have the fare. He said not to worry about the fare. She looked at him for a long time without saying anything. Then the gate opened from the inside and she went through. He sat in the car for 4 minutes with the engine off. He did not turn the radio on. He did not call anyone. He did not count what was left. He opened the logbook in the door pocket and recorded the night's trips: time out, time in, mileage, route. Under fare collected for the last entry, he wrote 0. He looked at that 0. Then he drove back toward Abasio Kai. The fuel gauge was reading close to the orange line. He did not stop for another passenger. He parked the Camry at 12:41 a.m. In the compound behind his building, checked the windows, checked the fuel cap, went inside. There was a pot on the counter with the last of the kenki from Sunday. He ate it cold from the pot, standing at the counter, slowly. Then he washed the pot and set it to dry and turned off the light. At 1:17 a.m. The apartment was dark. If this story is already working on you the way I think it is, subscribe before we get to what comes through that phone in the morning, because what Colade has spent 23 years building without knowing it is about to be seen by exactly the right person. At 6:08 a.m., his phone rang. He did not recognize the number. He silenced it. At 6:11 a.m., it rang again. The same number. He set it face down on the blanket. At 6:14 a.m., it rang a third time. He answered, a woman's voice, older, composed. The voice of someone whose entire professional life was the organizing of other people's mornings. She said, "Is this Mr. Colade Nwosu?" He said it was. She said, "Please hold." The silence that followed lasted 12 seconds, not the silence of a poor connection, but the deliberate silence of a phone being carried from one room to another. Then a different voice came on. Male, low, measured, the voice of a man who had not been uncertain in conversation for a long time. "Mr. Nwosu. My name is Emmanuel Owusu Boateng. I would like you to come to my home today, if you are available. I am told it was you at MedPlus Pharmacy on Liberation Road last night. I would like to speak with you about something I have been trying to find for the past 2 years." Colade sat up on the edge of the bed. He knew the name. Most people in Accra who operated within 50 meters of anything connected to the transport economy knew the name. Emmanuel Owusu Boateng was chairman of Owusu Boateng Transit Group. 1,400 vehicles. 2 government logistics contracts in 4 years, depots in 4 regions. He was 71 years old, according to the last profile Colade had seen in a newspaper at a barbershop on High Street, the kind of newspaper you read while you waited and did not take home. Colade said, "How did you get this number, sir?" The man said, "My daughter gave it to me." There was something Adaize had done at 11:58 p.m. the previous night, while Kolade was driving back across the city with 43 cedis and a fuel gauge reading toward orange. She had gone to the corridor outside the room where her cousin had laid Amma down, and she had taken out her phone, and she had dialed a number she had not dialed in 8 years. The last time she had dialed it, Emmanuel Owusu Boateng told her that if she went ahead with the marriage he had refused to approve, she could not call herself his daughter anymore. She had gone ahead. The man she married left when Amma was 3 and has not been part of this story or any story since. For 8 years, Adaize had raised the girl alone on an accounts assistant salary in Dansoman, and she had not called the number. She called it now. He answered on the second ring. He had kept her number in his phone for 8 years. His wife had told him 4 years ago to call it. He said he would when he was ready. He had not been ready. He listened to what Adaize told him. He did not speak for most of it. When she finished, he said 3 words. She said 3 words back. Then he asked her one question, the driver's name. She read it from the laminated card on the back of the headrest, which she had looked at twice during the drive. "Your comfort is my responsibility," she said. That is what the card says. The name below it is Kolade Nwosu. Emmanuel Owusu Boateng said he would call her tomorrow. He did not sleep that night. There was a woman at the corner of the compound taxi rank near Abasi Okai Market who had been selling roasted groundnuts from that exact spot for 26 years. The drivers called her Ma'ame Kwai. Her name was Constance Bodema, and she was 68 years old and small, with hands that had the permanent dark staining of a groundnut coal pot, and a way of folding them in her lap when she sat that made everything she said feel like it had been decided on before the conversation began. She had watched Kolade park the Camry in that compound every night for 11 years. She had watched him wash it in the mornings at 5:45 a.m., never at 5:30, never at 6 loco, precise as a prayer. She had watched him record the logbook before he unlocked the gate for the first shift. She had watched him, twice that she could name, hand his full day's fuel money to passengers who had nothing left to make it home. She had watched him stop on the Accra-Tema motorway at 2 a.m., once to push a broken-down van to the next turnoff so the family inside could reach a working phone. She had never told him any of this. It was not her habit to comment on what she observed. What she did, on the morning after Kolade came home late and silent, and did not turn the radio on as he usually did when he parked, was hand him a paper bag with 2 hard-boiled eggs and a piece of yam when he walked past her corner at 6:02 a.m. He stopped. He looked at the bag. "You were up late," she said. He did not ask how she knew. He sat down on the low wall beside her stall and ate both eggs. She sat beside him. The morning traffic on the road was beginning to build, the trotros calling out their routes, the hawkers crossing between lanes with water sachets held above their heads. After a while, she said, the ones who give when they have nothing left are always the ones the world comes back for. She said it the way people say things they have been certain of for a long time and have simply been waiting for the right moment to confirm. He looked at her. "Go home and answer your phone," she said. His friend Dubem told him not to go. Dubem drove the Medina shared route and had strong opinions about men who called taxi drivers at 6 a.m., claiming to be Emmanuel Owusu Boateng. He said it was a setup. He said men like that did not telephone commercial drivers out of kindness. He laid out his reasoning in full over 12 minutes, without significant pause. Kolade listened to all of it without interrupting. Then, he changed into the white shirt Afua had bought him at Accra Mall in 2016, the one with the small buttons, the one he wore for anything that mattered. and he drove to Cantonments Road. The compound had a perimeter wall the length of 2 houses. The gate was dark green. A guard took Colade's name into a radio and waved him through. A woman in a black dress met him at the entrance and brought him to a sitting room with high ceilings and wide windows overlooking a garden of old trees. There was a water jug on a table and 2 chairs set to face each other. He sat in one. He waited 9 minutes. Emmanuel Owusu Boateng entered without announcing himself. He was tall, solidly built across the chest and shoulders, in the way of a man who had worked with his hands for many years before he stopped having to. And he moved slowly, not with weakness but with the unhurried pace of someone who had learned long ago that there was no advantage to being the first person to settle into a room. He wore dark trousers and a long-sleeved shirt. He sat across from Colade. He looked at him directly, with the ease of a man who had stopped wasting time on preliminary assessments decades ago. "I know you are a careful man," Emmanuel said. "I asked about you this morning before I called." "Who did you ask?" "A woman who sells groundnuts near your car park." He paused. "She has been watching you for 11 years. She told me things about you that a reference letter would not contain." Colade said nothing. "I have been looking for a manager for my northern operations hub," Emmanuel said. "Kumasi Depot. 3 transit feed points. 52 vehicles. 12 permanent drivers. 16 contract operators. I have placed 3 men in that role in the past 2 years. 2 of them stole from me. The third could not organize his own desk." He stopped. "I need a man who knows vehicles, who keeps records, who does not spend what is not his." He waited 1 beat. Who spends what is his when someone else's child needs it more? The room was quiet in a way that had weight. Colade asked about Amma. Emmanuel told him Adaize had arrived at the house at 7 a.m. and that the girl's fever had fallen to 37.1 degrees and she was sleeping in the guest room. They spoke for 40 minutes. Colade asked about the fleet maintenance records, the depot lease structure, the driver accountability process, the fuel billing audit system. Emmanuel answered each question. Then he asked Colade to describe how he maintained his own vehicle. Colade described it exactly. The weekly fluid checks, the monthly brake inspection, the logbook system. The reason he kept a physical record when the app on his phone did the same job. "Because the phone can be hacked," Colade said. "The paper cannot." Emmanuel went still. Then he said, "When can you start?" On the last Monday of November of that year, a pharmacy management workshop was held at MedPlus on Liberation Road. The first of a 4-city series funded by the Owusu Boateng Foundation and attended by 42 pharmacy staff from across Accra. The morning session focused on patient first intake procedures for after-hours emergency presentations, with a full module on low-income patients, prescription flexibility, and the legal and ethical obligations that arose when a caregiver standing at a counter had partial funds and a sick child pressed against her side. The facilitator was a retired pharmacist who had worked the overnight dispensary at Korle Bu Teaching Hospital for 31 years. She did not raise her voice once in 3 hours. She said what she said and let it land. The young woman in the pink pharmacist's coat sat in the 3rd row. She did not look at her phone for the entire session. She did not look at anything except the facilitator. The logbook from the Camry, now parked in the Kumasi operations lot, its fare column duty finished, did not stay in the car. Colade brought it to the office on his first day. It sat in the corner of his desk beside the computer, beside the photograph of Afua from Labadi Beach that had traveled from the Camry's dashboard to the desk on the morning he drove to Cantonments and had not moved since. Beside the logbook, he kept the blue plastic folder, maintenance records, fuel receipts, vehicle registration documents, each in its labeled envelope. The folder was new. He had bought a replacement the week before starting, but the contents were intact. Nothing had ever been lost. 2 years after the morning, Emmanuel Owusu Boateng placed a phone call at 6:08 a.m. to a number his daughter read from a laminated card on the back of a headrest. Nana Nwosu walked across a stage in Ho in a white and gold gown on a Saturday afternoon in July. Kolade sat in the second row. Emmanuel and Adaizi were to his left. Mame Kwai was to his right. She had told him when he called that she had not left Accra in 19 years and had no plans to begin, but she was in the courtyard at 4 a.m. On the morning of the ceremony, with a paper bag of food for the journey and her hands folded in her lap, in her address to the graduating class, Nana said that the most important thing she had learned in 3 years of nursing study was that the most powerful thing a person could offer someone in crisis was not money or answers or medicine first. It was presence, the simple willingness to stay until the problem became solvable. She said she had learned it from watching her father work. Emmanuel Owusu Boateng thought he was looking for a fleet manager. He was, but the quality he had spent 2 years unable to find was not transport knowledge. It was evidence that a man could be trusted with things that mattered to other people. The logbook was evidence. The clean floor mats were evidence. The blue cloth envelope was evidence. The 0 written in the fare column at 12:07 a.m. on a Wednesday in November, carefully, precisely, in the same black ballpoint pen as every other entry, was evidence. Not because those things made Kolade unusual. Because they made him consistent. Consistent when no one was watching. Consistent when there was no reward scheduled. Consistent when the envelope was not for emergencies, and the emergency arrived anyway. The world does not always recognize what it is standing in the presence of. A name tag that looks at a dress before a face. A man at the back of a pharmacy who restocks his shelves as if the counter does not exist. These are not extraordinary failures. They are ordinary ones, which is precisely what makes them so difficult to forgive and so important to address, not through drama or punishment, but through a workshop on a Monday, in the same building where it happened, with a facilitator who spent 31 years on the overnight shift and has a great deal to say about what happens at counters in the dark. You cannot always know what your precision sets in motion. You cannot see the phone call being made 3 hours later in a room you have never entered. You cannot know that what looked, on a Wednesday night, like a loss, 82 CDs, a fare unpaid, a fuel gauge reading toward empty, was the document that would be placed the next morning in the hands of someone who had been looking for exactly that kind of proof. The people who give when they have nothing are not naive. They are the only ones operating with accurate information. They understand that what you hold on to tightly under conditions of scarcity does not multiply. What you release into the lives of others, especially in the precise moment when releasing it costs you the most, is the thing that returns to you structured differently. If someone has ever stayed when they did not have to, spent what they could not afford to spend, driven a route they would not be paid for, remained outside a gate until a light came on somewhere upstairs, this story belongs to them. If that person is you, leave what they gave you in the comments. Say what it was. I really want to read it. Subscribe for more stories about hidden strength, quiet power, and the people the world overlooks until they change everything. I'll see you in the next one.